Hey folks, Jason, JTL, Painfully Honest Tech, here with a painfully honest review of the Alienware 17R4 gaming laptop. That's a gaming laptop, but so much more. First thing I want to do, talk about specs. 17.3 inch 1080p IPS screen, 16 gigabytes of 2400 megahertz RAM, an i7-6700HQ, a GTX 1070 that's fully GTX 1070-like. In fact, some people say that the GTX 1070s that are in these laptops are better than, performance-wise, the other GTX 1070s for the desktops. I don't know if that's true. I don't do benchmarks, really. I just talk about my experience with this stuff. It comes with a huge-ass 240-watt power supply. It's also got plenty of I/O. It's got stereo speakers on the front and a little tiny, they call it a subwoofer, but that's not really a subwoofer. It's like a speaker that's maybe taking care of the bass end, but it's not a subwoofer. Subwoofer is a different thing. Now let's talk about the build quality. I'll say this: best built laptop I've ever owned. It's solid metal on the inside. It's soft touch, hard plastic, if that makes any sense, on the outside. It is covered, it's skinned in some aluminum all around in different places. The vents are vented with metal screens. I mean, it is just really, really solid. The keyboard is probably the best keyboard I've ever used on a laptop. It's got very nice key travel. It almost feels like a mechanical keyboard. It's not, but it has a nice travel to the keys. And the screen is honestly the best screen on a laptop I've ever seen, especially at 1080p. It looks like a higher res screen than 1080p, and the ports themselves are super solid. Like when you plug things in, there's a nice chunk that tells you that it's in there and it's in there solid, and there's no like flexing up and down, so it's really great. Two downsides, build quality wise. The trackpad, while it's glass and it lights up and all that's kind of cool, the buttons are a little mushy and the trackpad itself is a little too small, and it felt like it was just not quite doing what it needed to do. It just felt a little jerky at times. And maybe that's a driver thing, maybe it gets fixed, I don't know. But it just wasn't the best trackpad. I ended up using a mouse all the time. Last thing, negative-wise on the build quality, because the front has this sort of V shape to it, coming to a point in the middle, there are some very sharp corners on the edges of the keyboard, and my forearms would rest on those corners, and it was kind of painful. So let's talk about using this beast. As I said before, this thing is super solid. If anything, this Alienware 17R4 is overbuilt. I would worry about whatever I dropped it on rather than dropping the laptop itself. At nearly 10 pounds, this thing could do some serious damage if you were to, say, drop it on your foot. I edited a bunch of videos for the channel over a few weeks, and it actually seemed to render stuff faster than my i7 desktop back here, so no complaints there. I was routinely getting upwards of 90 to 100 frames per second in AAA games with nearly ultra settings in almost every game. When you're gaming, the fans do spin up, and it can be a little bit noisy, but not compared to some of the other gaming laptops that I watched videos for that seem to really have a jet engine kind of sound to them. This wasn't nearly as pronounced. The color accuracy on the screen was great. When I was doing Photoshop and Premiere work, I didn't feel like I was making blind choices about colors. Everything seemed to come out really well. There's a good amount of RGB going on with this laptop, but the RGB is very flexible. It's you can turn stuff on, turn stuff off. You can get a whole set of things going on that really look pretty nice. It's as understated as RGB could possibly be. This RGB is understated. And you can turn it all off if you want to, and everything will go back to looking somewhat normal. You're never going to get away with this thing just looking like a regular laptop, but if you're using it for professional type stuff, you can have it not look like a carnival. I just want to say, lighting up the glass trackpad, super cool. In some ways, the build of this thing kind of reminded me of those giant tough books that cops and construction workers and those kinds of folks used to use. Are those things still available? Let me know down in the comments. It's really kind of a chunky build that seems like it's going to go through a lot. It also has sort of a utilitarian design that reminded me of the old IBM ThinkPads back in the day. Not the Lenovo ones. Those things aren't quite as nice in my estimation, but for another video. So what are my feelings about this thing? You guys might have started to figure out that I really liked it. There's no flex anywhere. Press down on the keyboard, no flex. Try and flex the screen, almost nothing at all. The body itself will never, ever move. Comparing it to similarly priced gaming laptops, there's no contest. Those things feel cheap in comparison to this Alienware build. Now, I did carry it around to and from work and used it as a work computer as well as a gaming laptop, and it wasn't easy, I will say that. In fact, I had to go out and get a new backpack, the Alienware Vindicator 2.0. It was the only thing that I could be guaranteed would actually carry this thing. With an iPad Pro 12.9 inch, the Alienware 17, as well as the 3 or 4 pound power supply, this thing was heavy. It was sort of like going through basic training with a 40-pound backpack on. I did get a workout, and that was fine. Flip side, my wife tried it on, and if I hadn't been there to spot her and catch her before she fell down, it would have pulled her directly back onto her back, and that would have been bad. She would have been angry with me. So if you're a smaller person, keep in mind that this thing is probably not for you. But the specs themselves are beefy, and they aren't going to go out of date anytime soon. The i7-6700 is nearly as good in benchmarks as the 7700, and the GTX 1070 is a fantastic card. So this thing can dominate just about any game that's out there, and it probably will do so into the next couple of years. It can do video editing without batting an eye. 1080p 60 frames per second was rendering in really great times, about 7 minutes for a 10-minute clip. If you're looking for that kind of laptop, you know, like party on top, no, it's a business on top, party in the back, that kind of thing, you can't go wrong with this. But if I were looking for just something that I could take with me everywhere that I go, that would give me the opportunity to game, that would give me the opportunity to be productive and do the work that I need, and I didn't mind the fact that it weighed 10 pounds plus what the power supply weighs, the Alienware 17R4 would be at the top of my list, and is at the top of my list. I love this thing, and generally if you watch my channel, you know that I don't rave about things all that much. I'm going to give it, on my painfully honest scale, a 9 out of 10. There are a few little things in the design that I would have liked to see different. Bigger trackpad, not so pointy edges, maybe a few more options for plugging in USB, but with 2 USB 3 Thunderbolt, you know, super speed ports. You've got 2 regular USB Type A. You've got HDMI. You've got DisplayPort. You've got all the things that you could possibly want, and the opportunity to go and get the Alienware graphics amplifier if the graphics card in this does start to be a little bit less powerful than what games in the future might need. You've got that option too. The graphics amplifier you can get on eBay for 130 bucks. And throw a graphics card in there and you're good to go for years to come. So I have to give this a huge thumbs up. What do you guys think though? Do you guys use gaming laptops? This compared to other things? Let's have a conversation down in the comments. I'll be interested to know what you think. Thanks for being here. You know, like and subscribe and do all those things. Until the next time, this is the JTL, sometimes known as Jason. Painfully honest tech, painfully honest review of the Alienware 17R4. Until the next time, I'm out.